Hi, welcome back to TRACKBACKER. This video will discuss the records I've listened to for the release week of 2020 week 3 from January 17 to January 23rd. The album release schedule tends to pick up steam after a break in the first few weeks of the year, and there's gonna be more grounds to cover. Let's see if I can keep up a good pace.
Adventure mode! You start your adventure here!
Everybody wants to break down and run away.
My heart on fire, you set my heart on
This wasn't a passing phase. The pump taking on shot in the dark.
turn the lights down, we can watch the stars grow. You and me.
You get to listen to cool sounds! Alright, put 'em up!
You and your roller coaster.
A lot of cool releases to talk about for this release week, starting with a girl called Eddy's sophomore effort titled Been Around. With its elegance and accessibility, I would say it's solid proof that Sophisti-Pop remains undiminishable. There's a reminiscence to its contemporary classics of the 90s in the songwriting, but with the grandeur of the parade of instruments paired with her soothing vocal delivery, she's able to craft a really fascinating soundscape full of personality. A triumph of a record.
Hello, hello. I heard there.
Countless Branches by Bill Fay, as a send-off album to his discography, is oftentimes very simple in the compositions, but it really highlights the emotional inflections and the fragility in his singing. And that's all one can really ask for in a singer-songwriter record. I think about the album cover a lot, and I would like to interpret it as his music performances here being a safe haven, where the light and warmth emanated could give strength to the listeners to ward off the coldest in the void. The debut EP titled The Piss the Perfume by Hayley Mary of the Jezebel's fame isn't really reinventing the wheel or anything, but it has this grandiose stadium energy from the jangle pop inspired guitars and the anthemic bombasticity of power pop influences. I wasn't familiar with the band's output, but she has undoubtedly demonstrated herself as a talented vocalist. Love the moments when she utilizes her raspiness, especially in the track Holly, where she just yells it out on her feet.
The streets are filled with debris. The folks.
Keeley Forsyth walks out from the woods to deliver some hauntingly mesmerizing performances in her debut record titled Debris, which runs in the same vein as A Rouge of Thought, with the vocal performance given more emphasis in the songcrafts, though with heightened eeriness and neo-folk influences. I wouldn't say the general somber stems from pessimism, but more like arcane wisdom. After all, as she sings in the track Large Oak, look to yourself and you'll know everything there is to know. Very admirable for her strength in self-reflection and showing fragility.
Good news, good news, good news. That's all I wanna hear.
Circles as a posthumous effort by Mac Miller in collaboration primarily with producer John Bryan is a very consistent package with a lot of character. There's just something so intriguing behind the low-key vocal delivery. He has quite a strong presence, and I think the needle drops description is rather befitting. Wherein the instrumental direction, being relatively bare, puts the vocals in the forefront for an intimate listen. Additionally, the subtle shifting of tone down the tracklist from laid-back grooves to more somber moods really helps to prod for retrospection. I think it's interesting that oftentimes you get some very mellow melodies if you tone down the noise walls in a lot of shoegaze music, and Piaf Rouse seems to utilize that characteristic to its advantage in their record titled Empty Parks. I really like the homogeneity of the dual vocals. and the electronic textures sprinkled at random intervals kind of remind me of Velocity Design Comfort by Sweet Trip, but not as aggressive or challenging. I'm not really sure whether the music is as monotonous as some listeners describe it to be, though I suppose I wouldn't be bothered by the singularity if I liked the sound in the first place. Pinegrove to me feels like textbook for indie rock music, in which they have set a golden standard, albeit being run-of-the-mill. Nothing wrong with being typical if the execution is good after all. The twinkly guitars are lovely, and I like the rhythmic technicality in the background details for dynamics. Personally, I wouldn't say that this is their best work, considering their Amperland New York soundtrack is more ambitious and coherent, but it's still a very solid collection of tunes regardless.
Their brothers Williams said you don't ever talk.
Upon me writing for the album, I just realized Twee is slightly derogatory. Anyway, while crafting their record titled See You Tomorrow, it's as if the renowned folk outfit The Innocence Mission placed a time capsule all these centuries ago in a basement to be uncovered as an antique piece. Can't really fault me for thinking so, when aspects of the record, from the cover art to the echo-heavy mixing, feel intentionally designed to invoke the vintage imagery of winter streets in the 1900s. A delicate and quaint treasure. I was quite tantalized during the first listen of the Planet U's texture, but I don't think I ever managed to chase the same high across subsequent listens over these 4 years, I reckon. It's still a very solid math rock album nonetheless, that's worth all the shoutouts. It got plagiarized and repackaged for a reason. It can sometimes be a bit lost with technicality and alternating dynamics, but there are some great moments when they manage to keep the momentum going. The 8th album, Watashi wa Suki ni wa Ikanai Daro, by prolific rock band Odote Bakari no Kuni, is my first proper exposure to the band. While a lot of the albums featured here are, I could imagine the band being an inspiration for back cover. They can go equally hogwild in their songwriting, with incorporations of noise and guitar effects, and equally psychedelic if need be. There's a lot to uncover in this massive bundle, from the more livelier cuts like Aoi Pierce and Hellhole, to the sentimental ones like Crawl and Pet. But there's quite a number of sunshine pop grooves mixed in between. Just a mix of melancholy and fun while looking at the blue blob.
All I have to do is cruise this coast. What a nice breeze.
The album that stood out to me the most is Manami Kakudo's Ore, which really blew me away during first listen. I just imagined the album as this slice of life soundtrack for a miniature world, especially for the more minimal folk cuts with the flourishes of strings and synths in between. There's a gentleness aligning with the many folk musicians like Haruka Nakamura and Eiko Ishibashi, just to name a few. And her vocal style really reminds me of Miedo or even Hakushi Hasegawa maybe, soft and breathy and frangible, like the whispers of the heart. A collection of tunes that's soothing as lullabies and pleasant as sweet dreams. Like Beyonce, I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching.
I'd better get out of here. Wow!